And do you know what was the scariest part? Not Russian tanks. We didn't believe it then. They thought it was a mistake, a bad joke. But no, ours were simply killed by their own, with signs on his chest, coward and traitor.
By the spring of 1945, East Prussia was no longer a full-fledged front. It was a dying fragment of the Reich, sandwiched between the advancing Red Army and the Baltic Sea.
We already knew then that there would be no major breakthrough, no miracle strikes either. All we could do was sit in the mud, wait for the shelling, and hope that you wouldn't get blown up today.
From the north and northeast, the Germans were pressed by the First Baltic Front. He cut off the escape routes, beat the Neman, and gradually participated in the isolation of Königsberg and the Zemland Group. On January 14, the Second Belarusian Front advanced from the south. His task was to break through the defenses in the direction of Mlava and Marienburg, reach the Vistula and the Baltic, and thereby finally cut off East Prussia from the rest of Germany.
Soviet troops pushed through the German front so deeply that East Prussia actually broke up. One group was trapped in Königsberg itself. The other is in the Heiligenbeil area. The third is on the Zemland Peninsula, based on Pilau. The German command still demanded to hold on. But in the trenches and on the roads, everything looked different. It was not an organized retreat. It was the collapse of the front. In the morning, we receive order to hold position at all costs, and by evening find out that the neighboring area had already disappeared. The flanks were open, and the escape routes were cut. On the Baltic coast, in the area of Rosenberg and Heiligenbeil, we did not cling to the ground for the sake of victory. It was just a matter of holding out for another day, or at least another night.
The operational headquarters of the Wehrmacht in the area was located in the Rosenberg Village School building. The road to Heiligenbeil ran through the village, one of those arteries, along which the command also tried to keep in touch between units, pull up the remnants of reserves, and soldiers who strayed from their units were taken there. And it was there that the Wehrmacht field gendarmerie was particularly active.
Formally, their tasks sounded simple: control of roads, checking documents, searching for stragglers. But that was not all. But in the last months of the war, it all turned into something else, long ago. For ordinary soldiers, the gendarmes were perceived as punishers, as hunters of their own comrades. We hated them, almost all, because if a Russian could kill you in battle, then these could kill you after the battle.
Mobile patrols and assembly points operated in Rosenberg. Soldiers who had strayed from their units, or who didn't have a marching order, were taken there. If you left the encirclement without documents in the conditions of the collapse of the front, this was enough to immediately be under suspicion or receive an instant sentence under the laws of wartime.
No one was interested in why you had fallen behind. You've lost touch. You were crawling out from under fire. If you were looking for your comrades or shell-shocked, no one cared anymore. If they want to, they'll say you're a deserter. And then that's it. You're not human. You're an example to others.
It was in this atmosphere that the story that Wolfgang Kallinich remembered for the rest of his life took place. Not because it was the scariest thing at the front, but because it was the most disgusting thing. When death doesn't come from the enemy side, but on the orders of their own. In March 1945, thousands of soldiers roamed the entire coast from Rosenberg to Balga, stragglers, wounded, shell-shocked, lost units, really deserted, and simply thrown out of their units by the war. In the midst of this chaos, the field gendarmerie tried to restore order in the simplest way possible by fear. On March 21, 1945, 2 soldiers were shot near Großhoppenbruck on the road to Gnadenthal farm. One is a 19-year-old infantry private. The second is the 24-year-old Chief Fenrich. Both were from their own. Both served side by side. They were accused of cowardice and desertion.
When we found out about it, at first we just didn't believe it because it was too dirty even in those days. Yes, the front was collapsing. Yes, everyone was at their limit. But this was different. According to the official version, one of them was accused of allegedly shirking his duties after the death of the sergeant at arms. The second is that he allegedly voluntarily left the position, but those who served alongside them did not see this as justice, but the massacre. This Oberfenric was no coward. Everyone knew that. He had patches on his sleeve for damaged tanks. 5. 5, damn it! And suddenly such a person is called a coward? Yes, it was a spit in the face of all of us. There was a specific name behind this shooting, Hauptmann Theiss from the Hermann Goering Regiment, an officer who especially liked to punish where he himself was in no hurry to find himself under real fire. While ordinary infantrymen, gunners, and signalmen in East Prussia were being driven to die on the crumbling front, Hermann Goering units were still considered elite. They received special attention.
And when the situation became completely hopeless, a significant part of the remnants of the division were indeed evacuated through Pillau to the west. And thousands of ordinary soldiers, the very ones who were previously intimidated by gallows, signs saying deserter, and talking about duty will remain here, without any evacuation and without any mercy.
That's what burned us the most. These people taught us how to die properly. They talked about honor, duty, and the oath. And then, when it smelled like the end, ships were found for someone, and for someone caused only a pit by the road. Signs were hung on the chests of the executed, for everyone to see, so that everyone remembers. They wanted to intimidate us. But very soon in this story, they got what they deserved.
After one of the Russian strikes near Gnadenthal, the battle group where Wolfgang Kallinich was stationed received a short respite. At that time, the signalmen were restoring the broken line near the highway. There they noticed the field gendarmerie, which was scouring the front line in search of deserters. The signalmen immediately contacted their commander and reported exactly who appeared at the front edge.
The news spread quickly, and everyone's reaction was the same. Those jackals again. The front is falling apart, the Russians are pressing, there are not enough people, and they are still hunting for their own. The company commander ordered them to be brought to him by force if necessary. And after a while, 5 men came to the position. One is a representative of the field tribunal and 4 field gendarmes. When the gendarmes were brought to their positions, they immediately began to protest. They didn't understand what right they had to be dragged to the front line in the first place. One of them started demanding explanations almost from the doorstep, and that the task was to identify cowards and deserters. They looked as if they had been mortally insulted. Like, who are you to drag the military police here? They're used to grabbing others. And then suddenly they were captured themselves. We knew right away that something interesting was about to happen. The 5 were already about to leave back to the road. They probably decided that the conversation was over, but then the company commander stopped them. He looked at them in a way that made even us uneasy. He said, all 5 of them will stay here. And that's when their faces started to change.
The commander explained briefly. His officers and junior commanders had died. He didn't scream. He didn't threaten. He spoke almost casually. There are not enough people. Every person counts. This means that if these gentlemen have arrived at the front line, they will also help to hold their positions. Each of the 5 was given a Panzerfaust and ironically asked if they knew where to click and pointed them to the single cells they needed to occupy.
It was beautiful, just fine. Just a minute ago, they were telling us how to die for the Führer. We looked at them and saw how white they were. For real, not from the cold, not from fatigue, out of fear. Because it's one thing to put signs on other people's chests. It's quite another thing to sit in a pit yourself and wait for Soviet tanks to roll over you.
It was a rare moment of grim satisfaction for the company's soldiers. Not revenge, not a celebration, rather the restoration of balance. Even if only for a few minutes, these people will feel what they so easily condemned others to.
The commander told them something else. First, Soviet tanks usually come through our trenches, pushing us into the ground. Then the infantry comes. So get used to it. A useful skill.
This scene had all the madness of the last weeks of the war. People who are used to judging suddenly find themselves among those who were previously considered expendable. Those who have spoken the loudest about debt are afraid of the same thing as everyone else.
The only difference was that ordinary soldiers lived with it every day, and for them it suddenly became an insult. In war, a person can be killed by the enemy, but the worst part begins when his friends are ready to kill him. And that's what I remember best.